We're going to call the meeting to order. I had one tap it. I like doing that. We're going to call the Village of Westmont Administration Finance Committee Board Budget Workshop meeting to order at this time. If we can have the roll call, please.
Mayor Ron is absent tonight. The clerk's here. Mayor Pro Tem Forsley.
Here.
Trustee Emery.
Here.
Trustee Fleming.
Here.
Trustee Klebanow.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca.
Here.
Manager Searle.
Here.
I know Acting Finance Director Parker is here. Public Works Director May. Here. Fire Chief Trout. Here. Deputy Fire Chief Weiss. Here. Economic Development Director and Assistant Manager Kimball. Here. Director of Fire Administration Scala. Here. Police Chief Mulhern. Deputy Police Chief Gunther. Here. Deputy Police Chief Brenza. Here. Police Administrative Assistant Rice.
So everyone can please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe we have a delay in the copying of the of some of the material. So if I can go to Ron, and I know you had some other things that we have to do prior.
Well, what I'd like to suggest is we were going to have an executive session for personnel at the end. Since that is not necessarily dependent upon some of the material they're still trying to put together, I think we could probably have that now, go through those items. It actually might even help put some things into context as you hear some of the other explanation later. And then we'll come back out and then Spencer Parker is going to give you an overview of primarily the general fund tonight and the different fund balances. And then, of course, our plan is to have the next budget workshop will be this coming Saturday at 3:30. And if we follow this schedule, theoretically we get through the entire budget on Saturday, but we have an extra date as well coming up on May 5th. Which right now we do not have anything specifically scheduled for that budget workshop, but we can either go back, look at things, or if there's questions that the board brings up during the meetings tonight and on Saturday, then we can try to address that at that meeting. So that would be my suggestion at this point.
Is that okay with the board?
Also, our Human Resource Administrator Casey is here. I'm sorry I didn't see you before.
And for those in the audience, then we will not stay in there. If we get bogged down, if Spencer comes, we can stop.
Yeah,
come back out. So
I don't anticipate it'll be that long,
okay.
But certainly if we feel like there's a lot of questions and things that we need to review, we can adjourn from that and come back and
do it afterwards.
We can always fill in with highlights from the Wizards game.
There you go. Then we have a motion.
Or lowlights.
To go into executive session for personnel.
So moved, Scott. Second, Fleming.
Roll call.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Fleming?
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow?
Yes.
Trustee Emery? Yes. Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Forsley?
Yes. We're adjourned to executive session. One hit it again.
And Mark.
We'd like to reconvene the Village of Westmont Administration Finance Committee Board Budget Workshop at this time. And again, I apologize. It took a while for executive session, but we're all set to start the workshop. And I turn it over to Ron once again.
Well, actually, we're going to turn it over to our Acting Finance Director, Spencer Parker. He's going to explain the documents that have been handed out, and I know he's got some visual things he's going to throw up on the TV screen for the board to look at. And we want this to be informal, so if anybody has any questions at any point, this is not a formal presentation by any stretch of the imagination. And I know the department heads will have some opportunity to give some comments as we go along as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Spencer.
All right, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Board of Trustees. I apologize for the delay in getting everything together. I had this brilliant plan. It was going to revolutionize the budget process. Mm-hmm. Every year we spend all this time, we print out copies and then we change them out. And so this brilliant plan was there's this great feature where you can combine all these files in a single Adobe file, and you can put page numbers, and you can print it all out, and then there wouldn't be any work. It'd just be the printer doing all the work. Well, there were a couple of problems with that in practice. First of all, apparently it doesn't like up to 83 files. It got all the way through file 38 a couple of times, and then it just kind of died. And then secondly, the printers don't print quite as quickly as I was expecting. So I apologize profusely for the delay, and I am sorry.
Spencer,
problem.
these are up to date as of 7 o'clock, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's the best we're gonna get.
As up to date as you can get.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So the first sheet that's up to date as of 6:54 p.m. So it's just before 7. You can see, and it's the same one that's on the screen, is the fund summary. This is similar to the items that you've seen before. The difference from previous ones is if you look over in the projected net column, at this point in time you'll actually see a positive number. So you can see in the general fund we're estimating revenues of about 19.7 million, expenses of about 19.6 million, leaving 48,000 to the good. So right now in the general fund we are currently projecting an increase of revenues over expenses. So that is good. You can see down here the different expense amounts for the different departments. The next page shows you the expense comparison from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. And you can see that initially it looks like a very large percentage increase with 5% increase. However, a portion of that is an increase in grant revenue, which is always a good thing. And so it's an increase in expense offset by an increase in revenue. And additionally, we have some other items we'll go into a little bit later, but we've got a couple $100,000 for increases in things such as fuel. We've got some additional things that we'll see later on. But as you can see in here, it goes through the different percentage increases for the different departments and the dollar amount increases. So overall, we've increased 932,000, but again, a large portion of that is due to grants as well as a fuel increase. The next section goes over our revenues, and the first page here shows the University of Illinois Flash Index, which is an index that kind of looks at Illinois' general economy. And you can see, starting in fiscal year 2008-2009, it went down pretty significantly. However, the good news is you can see in fiscal year 2010 through 11 that it's beginning to go up again. And it's been going up consistently this entire fiscal year, which is why you'll notice our revenues are doing better than projected, and we're able to have an increase of revenues over expenses. This next table shows sales tax revenues, and you can see the amount that were budgeted and then our increase. So we had budgeted a total of $7.4 million in all of our sales tax, local use, and supplemental sales tax. And we're actually projecting to receive about $7.8 million. And so we're conservatively budgeting to be just under what we project at $7.7 million. You can see on the next page the comparison, which shows from month to month. And this current fiscal year, the 2010-2011, is the teal line, the aqua line, which has been following the orange line pretty well. It's been doing a little bit better than the orange line, and we're through January right now and is slightly above right now. So again, that's another indication that our sales tax is going well, our revenues are doing well. Our income tax, on the other hand, is not doing quite so well. Our income tax, as well as the other state shared revenues, are based on population. Due to the recent census where we lost population, as well as due to the fact that we're looking at a decrease in state funding. So last year it was an estimated $77 per capita. Now we're looking at $73 per capita. So the amount per capita went down and our population went down, so our income tax is lower. The next one shows the utility tax, which has also been doing fairly well. It's been fairly consistent. We're doing a little bit better than we had budgeted. We're budgeting to continue to do fairly well, just right about the same level. Hotel motel taxes, on the next page, as you can see, took a significant hit in 2009, 2010, but they're beginning to recover in 2011, and we're, again, assuming for next year's budget that we're going to be slightly under where we were in 2011. Our state motor fuel tax, which again is a state shared revenue driven by population, you can see that's also declining based on our revenue and also based on the local share dropping from 2530 to 2375. This next section goes into a little bit of detail on the property tax, and you can see our property tax that we've now had 2 years of a decline in our total assessed valuation. And so what that means is even if revenues remain constant, then the property tax rate ends up going up a little bit because our equalized assessed valuation has gone down. This chart shows the revenue which we've received, and the large increases in revenue that you see in 2009 and then in 2010 are due to a decision from the board that we wanted to begin funding our police pension. And that's funded through the property tax. We have, and we continue to fund 105% of the previous year's annual required contribution so that we're able to be working towards fully funding our police pension. Because of that increase in the police pension cost and because we have to increase revenue to be able to fund that increased pension cost, you can see that our tax rate has gone up, and the vast majority of that increase is due to the police pension, and then also to the fact that our equalized assessed valuation has been dropping. This next section, and it's the next section that you were given, it's the black and white striped item, is a list of some of the preliminary cuts that the different departments were able to make. This year, as we went into the budget, we had several meetings with department heads where we talked and made some additional preliminary cuts, and then we gave them some targets and asked them to come back with sort of prioritizing from them what they'd like to be able to keep and the items that they'd be able to reduce, as well as the impact to be able to reach those targets. So what you have here is similar to what we've had in previous years, where it shows the different item, shows the account of the item. The first column is the original requested, then we have the revised amount, and then what the total reduction is. Now you can see, for example, we've got in legislation and administration, under printing and binding, we've got the village calendar printing. The original request in last year's budget was $15,000. This year we're budgeting $8,000, which is a reduction of $7,000. And that reduction is only a reduction from the prior year's budget because, as you'll recall, last year we continued with the calendar, we left it how it was budgeted and then addressed it later in Administration and Finance Committee meetings, and we're able to come up with some savings. And that is reflected in the calendar as well as in newsletter printing. And then each of the departments went through and was able to meet their targets, and all the departments worked very diligently to come up with difficult cuts to be able to meet these difficult targets, and they all cut significantly and tremendously. And so the cuts that you see here, the original request is again what they had requested in their budget, and then it shows what the new amount was. So all of the departments have made significant cuts, and we'll look at them in a little bit more detail, and we can talk about them again as we move into their specific departments so that we can look at the cuts along with what's left in the budget. So that goes through all of those cuts. Any questions so far on these preliminary items?
I have a question under the village calendar.
Yeah.
We budgeted before the cost of the calendar, the printing, the postage, when it used to be mailed, or the delivery. One of the things that was kept separately and was only budgeted half the amount was the cost for Larry for the production.
Yes.
Is this cost here of the 8,000, is this including McIntyre's fees? Because we did budget 45 and his fees were more like around 8,000.
Yes, that is correct. The 8,000 that's listed here is only for the printing. The other amount in administration has been corrected and is the full 8,000, which is what we
So
should
we
have
are
been
now,
budgeting.
okay, so
Yes,
we do
we
have
have
that
now
budgeted
corrected
for the
that.
8. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So it's actually costing about 16,000 for the calendar center, 8 for McIntyre and 8 to produce, print.
Yes, and then there's a little bit additional for postage.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, we didn't mail them out last time, we just had them come and collect it.
But Spencer, isn't both those numbers, those are just directly related to the printing?
Yes, those are the items that are just for the printing.
Those don't have anything to do with his fee for
No, they're not
creating-
his fee, they're not the postage, they're not anything else. Okay.
Thank you.
So then the big packet that has the big binder clip on it, I'm sorry, were there any other questions? Those initial items? So far, looking. Okay. All right, so the first couple of pages are kind of the revenues in detail. We've kind of gone over them in summary. So we go down to about, start with the legislation, it's about 10 pages into it. We can get into the detail. And other than, so, I mean, it'd be kind of useful to be able to have the cuts sheet along with legislation, so you kind of switch back and forth. All right, so the major changes in legislation are just the items that we've identified there. The majority of them were left as we had them in the original budget from last year. And last year, we spent some significant time looking through the budget, making sure all the line items were correct, and we didn't want to make any changes from the items the board had directed us last time. One of the changes that you will notice is under the dues and subscriptions section, there is a cost listed in here.
Is that the DuPage Children's Center?
Yes. The
Yeah.
DuPage Children's Center for about 4,000. It's almost at the very bottom. The DuPage Children's Center for 4,000. This is an item that apparently was not included in last year's budget. And several years ago, it was an item that was up for consideration. At that time, the board had decided that they wanted to continue funding it. And we have continued funding it, but for some reason, it never made it back into the budget 2 or 3 years ago. That has also been corrected and is now in here as that amount. So you'll notice the dollar amount in the budget went up, but there was no specific change in that.
So the Senior Citizen Council, that's static in terms of what we spent last year, the dollar
Yes.
amount we have in the budget. And then the DuPage Convention Tourism Bureau is what we estimate based on our anticipated hotel motel revenues.
Right.
What that's going to be this fiscal year. And then tomorrow night, you're going to have a presentation from Skip Stripmatter and maybe 1 or 2 other people from her staff from the Convention Tourism Bureau. So you have an opportunity to talk with them about what they provide as a result of our contribution to them.
I know that you haven't had a chance to look through these as much. We're sort of doing the condensed version today of the presentation, looking at the material at the very beginning. But are there any additional questions at this time on legislation?
The beginning, Parker, under personnel services, it's got the 6 board members and the mayor's stipend.
Yes.
Following that, what are wages, awards, and bonuses year-to-date of over $1,500?
Okay, that $1,500 are the amounts that were paid out as retirement gifts. This year they were run through the payroll module. We had presented them as checks to some of the individuals that retired at the beginning of the fiscal year.
So the policy
Bob
we have-
Zeiger, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the policy we have where based on the sliding scale of the number of years, you get a payout. It's something we've talked about pretty extensively in the past at the Administration Finance Committee. That has to be run through the payroll, so that's what's showing up here.
Then why isn't it coming out under legislation? Shouldn't it be under the department payroll?
I mean, we could move
It
it.
could be either. I guess we could move it if you'd rather
Yeah,
line up in each department.
the initial thought was that it was sort of a thank you from the village, from the board, saying, thank you for your years of service to the village. Kind of here's a generic, the group of all of them received this money. They came, I believe they came before the board, were thanked for their service, and then at that time also received a paycheck.
And it's taxable income in the form of
Yes.
a paycheck.
Taxable income in the form of a paycheck. The wages were grossed up so that what they ended up receiving was what we wanted them to receive.
And I don't think it belongs in legislation.
Okay. We can certainly journal that out and move it to the individual departments. That's not a
Just to-
problem.
I'd like to also revisit reducing the number of paid board meetings. I know we had a lot of discussion about it a year ago, and we've been able to combine several meetings this fiscal year, well, 3 or 4 anyway. And I think there's an opportunity there to save money for staff, for the taxpayers, to be more efficient. So I'd like to at least talk about that a little bit.
I would say I'd be in favor of that as long as it includes the mayor and the clerk too, everybody across the board.
We can talk to the attorney and see if there's a way that we can legally do that. I just feel to be paid $100 for a 10-minute meeting is a gross
Yeah,
expenditure.
our ordinance provides for meetings on Monday night, so I know you had talked about doing them, combining them on Thursday, but it would actually be on Monday.
That, or maybe go back to, there was a time when you were paid for the voting meeting, but not the workshop, or vice versa, to maybe go back to that and still have 4 meetings a month, but maybe cut the salary.
I'm not opposed to that.
Can we look into how we can do that, if that can be done?
We can. I think the problem we ran into before with the mayor and the clerk was because the way the ordinance is written, it's an annual salary, and I don't think you can change it for the current people in those offices. It would have to be for the next term in office.
So even if you're reducing the amount? I mean, that doesn't pass the sanity check. I could understand not being able to give a raise, you know.
No, I think it's any, I think John told us before, it's any change to the mayor's stipend has to be done for the next term, not for.
Change it, it just is not going to affect.
It can't affect the current term.
But we'll check into
I
that
could
again.
turn that down.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should definitely look into it. And in the meantime, if we can't get an answer for this budget year, I mean, I'm willing to do it in either case. I mean, if the mayor and the clerk continue to draw that salary, it would be better if they didn't, certainly, because it would be more savings for us, for the village. But in the event it's not possible, it's still about $27,000 a year. That, you know, that's.
So the concept would be to leave the number of meetings the same, but to clarify the ordinance so that we.
Either one. I mean,
For only the village board
Okay.
meetings.
Well,
I see it 2 ways. Either combining the business, which we've been able to do quite effectively a few times.
But we can't guarantee that's based on.
Right. Even though other towns do it all the time. But, you know, if we had to call a special meeting, that would be fine. We're not paid for special meetings anyway. Or go back to paying just for 2 meetings a month to still realize the savings. But
I'm in
salary
favor
savings.
of combining meetings, because even though we have exempt people, they sit here night after night after night after night. while we duke out whatever, and their presence is appreciated and often needed, to sit here and then, require others to come back on a voting night in case we have other questions. It's very simple to have a workshop and then go into a voting meeting that night. And we know that twice a month that meeting's going to be brutal, and we'll do what we have to do. If we need a special meeting on a special project, we call a special meeting. And if there's something that we need more information on or something like that, we kick it 2 weeks. It's not a big deal, because sometimes we don't accomplish much from Thursday to Monday. And if somebody just says, I'm not comfortable voting, we all say, because we've gone to this condensed system, we can appreciate if somebody's not comfortable voting, that we move it 2 weeks to the next meeting. So,
But there's
I'm
a flip
totally in
side to all
favor.
this also. And the flip side is that people who want to get involved in local government and may not be able to afford to do the things that we're able to do, which is either go to the seminars and go to the dinners and go to all the functions that we have to pay for, that eliminates a whole segment of our population, to where at least they might break out even at the end of the year. So there's that flip side to doing this.
When you look at the fact back from '97 when I was on the first time, and the village paid for everything. I mean, they paid. They wanted you to go to the meetings. They wanted you to go to anything, whether it was Holy Trinity, Mays Lake, anything, and they paid for your spouses, and everything was rosy. And we cut things down as the time went. The problem I have only with trying to combine the meetings is we're not giving the public, when they listen on TV and they hear what we're discussing, we're not giving them a chance to voice their opinion before we vote on it. We're sitting there making our own minds up, and then we're going to vote on it that night, and then we're going to hear from the public and go, well, why didn't you think about that? Or I didn't know that was coming up on the agenda. And that's the biggest problem I have combining them. That's why I'd rather think about it, what we talk about Thursday, mull it over, research, and I've done some hell of research.
So you make a good point. So then maybe we just say we'll pay 2 meetings a month.
Well, we did
We could do
that
that
back when I got on. Now, the problem we had was, and the reason it got changed, and it wasn't until Mr. Linehan found this out, was people were getting paid only for Monday's meeting. And it was $100, I believe, for Monday's meeting. Right. The problem was they got paid whether they showed up or not. That was the way it was written in our laws there. And Mr. Linehan didn't even realize it till he missed so many meetings in a row, and he still kept getting paychecks, and he's the one who brought it up. We tried to change it then to say you only get paid for meetings you show up, but then it came into a big deal on, well, what constitutes a meeting? And I suggested back then, why don't we split? Because I remember Wendy was adamant. Well, why should I come, if I come to Thursday's meeting, and that's the longest meeting, that's where the public comes in.
I'm not
She
trying
came in
to
and said, if I
rewrite
come to
history.
Thursday, but I don't make Mondays, that means I don't get paid for anything.
But that's history. That's, we're talking 15
I'm
years ago.
trying to bring you up on the history.
Oh,
if you'll
no,
bear
I
with me.
understand. I
So
understand.
that's
And you
where
make a good point.
That's where we came up with trying to split the amount and say you got paid for something for Thursday, you got paid something for Monday. The problem we ran into is we could not change the dollar amount because it was too close to an election.
But we can change the
Well, that's
number
what I'm
of paid
saying. If we
meetings.
change the dollar amount and do like 50 for Thursday, if you want to do 4 meetings, or if we can combine them, we'll even save more, that would be fine. 50 for Thursday, 50 for Monday, if we have a long agenda.
Or just pay 2 meetings a month.
But then you run into whether you show up for them or not.
We don't get paid if, no.
We don't get paid
that-
if we
don't show up.
But not anymore, you don't.
We did used to pay, but I'm
But
saying...
no, this is now. We don't get
if we
paid
don't show
now if
up.
we're not here.
I know, but I'm saying that the whole purpose was that if you had a Thursday meeting...
What's that got to do with going
If you
back
have a
to-
Thursday meeting and you
Right.
go through most of the work, but you miss Mondays, which is the day you're getting paid, then you don't get, I mean, that was the whole
Oh,
reason.
I see what you're saying.
That was the
Okay.
whole reason that, that she was upset about it.
Okay.
Thursdays are the worst nights. That's when we're open to the public. They're the longest meetings.
Yeah.
But
Well, then maybe
you don't
that's
show
the
up for
meeting
the
we get
Monday
paid
for the
for.
10-minute one, so...
So maybe we change it and say if we're going to have 4 meetings a month, you get paid for the workshop meetings, but not the voting meetings. And you have to be here to get paid.
That would be fine, or just
I-
spend $50 a meeting and you have to
We
show
need to
up.
move on. I think you got a good I think you got a good discussion.
I think Ellen makes a
and-
good point about staff, and we really need to,
We can go back to
Think about
$50 a
that.
meeting
We
and
could
just
try-
make sure you show up and still try to combine the meetings, which is great. I don't mind combining them, but I don't like rushing on a decision.
Then say that you
talking
want
about
to
it
kick
for a
it.
year.
Then say you want to kick it. I mean, how many times is there something that's mundane and we can talk about it, or not even anybody has anything to say, you know, about whether the guys can go out on cast with the boots, and vote on it and get it off the agenda and get it gone? And if there is something that is a heated issue, you know, multifamily licensing comes back up, it's not going to be done in one night. We're going to say, let's kick it and give the public an opportunity.
Well, how about opening up a restaurant? When we talk about it on Thursday, and then we have the weekend to find out, like we did before, if there's pros or cons or things about it. That was very important that we did not vote on it because we got all excited about a restaurant coming in.
Well, that's the same as your example of,
So
you
say
know,
you
something
wanna-
like the licensing. That
We
might be an
can
example
sit
of
here
what we
and do a
say.
lot of what if, what if,
Yeah.
what if.
Yeah.
I mean, we can keep going forever on that one.
All right,
So
but I think we should-
I think what's in agreement with everyone is you'd like to look at it, at maybe seeing if there's a way to reduce the cost. I think Trustee
Absolutely.
Scott brought up a good point, where there are a lot of functions that you like to go to and require to go to that we're paying for now. I think that's a factor. I think Trustee Klebanow brought up a good point, that the residents need that,
An
sometimes that
input.
time frame from Tuesday. So you've got a Thursday to Monday, so you have a lot of good points. I'm going to throw one out there, and then I leave on Monday. You also, I think it was Trustee Scott who brought up starting the meetings at 7 o'clock. And you guys were, everybody, trustees here were kind enough. I said it was tough for me to get her at 7 for some of the family activities I do, but that might be another thing. If you have it on Monday, if you do go to one meeting, you might push up. So you have a lot of good thoughts, I think,
Well, for this,
fine, and you look at all those things and
well, for
take all
this
those into
budget, though, I think it's
consideration.
good that we're trying to combine them, and I think this year, let's just look at the fact of how many we could combine and how difficult some of these were that would cause a problem before we just jump full-handed into it and then start calling special meetings.
Well, and
because
we
of
get
this.
we get the agenda far enough in advance to know. I think we could just go on the premise we're going to have 2 meetings a month, and then kind of turn it over the opposite. If we need another meeting, we do it. If we need a third meeting or a fourth meeting.
Or what you could do, which has been done in other communities, is you have first and second readings on some of the things. So it
Right.
addresses what
Good.
Trustee
I mean-
Klebanow's concern is about making too rash of a decision. But everybody has to understand that things are going to be a longer cycle for some
I think
things.
that's what Bolingbrook does.
Downers Grove
And
does it,
Downers
for
does,
example.
yeah.
But
But
it's
it's
done in a
also,
lot of
it's
communities.
staff that's the one who adds, the attorney and Ron, you're the ones who puts the pressure and puts a thing on, because we don't add things on Thursday. I don't know if any of us really added anything. But staff has always added either extra, POs or something that came up that couldn't wait for another set of meetings. So like I told you before, if you're ready for a meeting, that's your thing.
Well, we can adapt. I mean, if we know what the schedule's going to be, then we'll figure out a way to work with that schedule. The first and second reading concept would help with the issue of giving you more time to digest things, between the time that
But
you
I'm
first
saying
hear
this year
about it
could
and
be
you
a
actually
learning
vote it.
thing on what we're seeing and what we're missing, because this is how it's been, I guess, since the board was initiated. So this is a lot of training more for staff than for us.
We can do that.
Okay.
And I think, Ron,
They're
you just
quick
brought up a good
studies.
point.
Yeah.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Other communities have done.
I'll come up with some
Great,
options
thank
to
you.
look at.
Thank you.
Other
As
questions?
far as, the only other thing that I have in legislation, and I have a problem with this, is buried money. Not that it's buried, but it's not accounted for. We have miscellaneous supplies of $1,000. Is that office supplies? Is it what? It's just miscellaneous supplies for $1,000. We have expense allowance of $200, even though we have training and conferences and dues all accounted for. We have miscellaneous under training, another $1,000. We have miscellaneous under dues, another $500. And then we have miscellaneous services, which are various events with a miscellaneous under miscellaneous of $500. Why do we have all these miscellaneous items? Is it unanticipated costs? Is it costs of things that we think are going to be spent, which would otherwise probably get axed from the budget? What are all these?
The former, not the latter. In the case of miscellaneous supplies, we didn't even spend anything this year. I mean, we can take that out. I mean, it's there for something that we haven't anticipated.
Okay, because if it's something that, you know, the possibility of something where you would need it for X, that's one thing. But, you know, because there's a lot of things in here where right down to, like, for the mayor, which we've talked about, all the awards banquets for the mayor and Mrs. Mayor, for Winter Gala, Economic Outlook, golf outings, all of that, that to then have another $1,000 under miscellaneous, I'm not comfortable with. So I'm going to go through all this and highlight everywhere in this budget that I see an unaccounted for miscellaneous. There's got to be some wiggle room, I understand that. But wiggle room within wiggle room, I'm not comfortable with.
So you want us to look in each department at that specific issue and where we can make adjustments?
Yep.
The other thing is, I guess I would have to say also, was it not, did we not set the policy that the only person that the village would pay for at any given event was the mayor and his spouse, and I believe even the village manager or his designate? That's it, correct? Okay. And I think it ought to be put in the budget that way, and that's the only money that goes out that way.
What we have done, and of course we've talked about, you and I, about the detail of this, but just to clarify for everybody, what we've done is for certain types of things, we've offered to go ahead, take the RSVP, make that at the event, and then we turn around and we invoice the trustee for that activity as a matter of convenience. We don't have to do that. I know when I talked with the finance department about this previously, they didn't think that that was a big issue as far as, you know, manpower and cost, but we certainly can stop doing that. That's not the
I would just
big
prefer it
issue.
not be done that way anymore.
Either would I. If trustees want to go to a function or village employees want to go to a function, it's their responsibility. It's their responsibility to write their own check and make their arrangements. To have village funds expended with the idea that it will be reimbursed at some point in time, I'm not comfortable with. We've budgeted for certain events, certain people. That's it. Everybody else, because I know that certain things we all get together and buy a table so we get the cheaper thing, but we do it on our own. I don't like the fronting money for trustees to go to things.
We can certainly change that.
Got to make your life easier, Spence. Fine with me.
Fine either way. We're happy to do either one.
That's fine.
So we want to just
If that's
list that
easier.
specifically in the budget so that there's no question about it, is what you were saying.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it's not really a savings, but it makes
No,
sense.
no,
It's a good thing.
It's a policy, a practice.
Transparency, I think, more so than anything else.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
Anything else in legislation?
Yep, good.
All right. Let's move on to the clerks then. And the clerks have a very small budget and they have made very significant cuts. Carrie actually ended up, Carrie and Jeannie together kind of, with making their cuts, ended up cutting many times their initial target. And you know, we joked that I believe they cut around 5 times their target, which came to a total of $5,000. And you know, we said, well, by that same token, could somebody whose target was $400,000, could they cut $2 million? And obviously that didn't happen, nor was it expected. But clerks did a very good job of looking in depth at what they had and what they continued to need. The big change that you'll notice in clerk, well, relatively speaking, the big change you'll notice in clerks is under printing and binding, the village code electronic supplement. Previously there were many, many copies sitting in boxes. So we paid a company to print all these pages that would sit in a box in an office, and sometimes they'd be delivered to people who would then hold them in their own box. And most of the internal departments had begun using the electronic version rather than the paper version, so Carrie was able to look through and see who continued to use them and only pay for what is used. So we were able to reduce that. That was the major change in the clerk's office. I don't know if there's any additional questions about that department.
That's good.
All right. Glenn is not here today, so if there's any specific questions about IT, we may need to wait for that, but we can take a quick look through. And you could also take a look at the reductions that he had made. So on the preliminary cuts list, you'll see information technology. One thing that was originally proposed was to replace the security system here at the Village Hall for about $12,000. And the feeling was that it's beginning to get outdated and might be ending soon, and so if it goes bad, we wanted to have the money to replace it. The decision was made to hold off on it, only to replace it if it goes. It's the same kind of decision we've made in other departments for other equipment that we have said, okay, if it goes, we'll replace it, but we're not going to necessarily plan to replace it immediately. And then the other major significant cut that you'll notice on the preliminary cut sheet from information technology was the Citrix virtualization software. That is something that last year in the budget, the board authorized IT to begin going towards looking at virtualization, which would be able to use thin clients and be able to save on computer replacements. And we've got the first set. We're going to start looking and see how they do before we commit to spending that extra $14,000. You'll also notice in here a few items that have kind of been, I guess, sort of moved around, where the items that are specifically for the dispatch costs have been added in. So network security went up slightly. And then you'll notice there's the door access at police down in maintenance services equipment for 50-50-41, the $9,000 for door access at police is also new and is to facilitate the consolidated dispatch. Are there any other specific questions?
So he's planning on running a staff of 3, including himself, for next fiscal year?
Yes, that is correct. That's my understanding at this point. Anything else at IT?
I just say if we can take a look at this a little bit more, that when, maybe Glenn's here, we can talk to him about if we have any questions on this section. I'd prefer not to really go over it in great detail without Glenn here to explain some of the items that are in there.
Nitty-gritty. All right. Makes sense.
Real quick, Spencer, when, under professional services for IT,
Yeah.
where you see like network security,
Yes.
is that 64 hours? And cable TV work, is that 624 hours? What's the number in print?
I will double check on that. I believe that it is the number of hours, but I will verify that with Glenn.
Yeah, please do, because I'm looking at divided out hourly rates and stuff, like for network security, it's $110 an hour and some other things. So let me know what those numbers are, please.
We'll check with that. You know that some of them are meetings, so I'm not sure if cable TV workers just the hours or if it's the meetings. We will verify that.
It's usually he comes running in, but
Yes,
Not
yes, he is not here today, but we can address that later.
okay.
So when it shows on the same area, the village board meetings, that's the highest amount because we'll have less than 48 meetings a year.
Yes.
So that'll keep going down, okay.
Yep, that is correct.
Where's the insurance item? It shows up in one column there. 22,166. Shows only under 2011.
Yes, I believe that was a purchase, and I believe we got reimbursed by the insurance company. It was a purchase for one of the items that got, I believe it was when it got struck by lightning.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a reimbursement.
Yes, it's reimbursed by the insurance company, yes. Okay.
Would you check on that? Because we should show a,
The offsetting reimbursement?
Exactly.
Sure.
Do you want to know specifically what the item was?
no, I remember what it was. It was when the lightning struck the fire station.
Yeah.
But if it shows an expenditure on year-to-date that was reimbursed, it would actually be a wash.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, and we can verify that we did receive the money.
Okay.
Okay. To economic development. Which apparently,
There's a
right underneath
administration
the
is,
administration heading.
okay.
So, see, if the full PDF file had worked, there's no way things would have gotten out of order. Yeah, just wouldn't have gotten done in time, obviously. Okay, so, we're in economic development. The one thing you'll notice, the one large item that you'll notice in professional services is a significant increase from the previous year. Last year in the budget, it was budgeted as if we were continuing with our current staff. We were going to be offering some voluntary retirement incentives, but because we were not sure who would be accepting those, we budgeted as if we were continuing under the status quo. We did have individuals that accepted those voluntary retirement incentives, and so we are now outsourcing those services. And you'll see them listed there under Morris Building Inspector, Morris Plan Review, Morris Clerical. So that is the big change, reduction in wages and health insurance, and then an increase in professional services.
Now, did you mention, let me interrupt you for a second, did you mention, I might have missed it while I was looking at charts and stuff, for benefit of anybody if they decide to, pull this off later off a podcast or something, that the budgeted wages are at 2.5% increase?
I have not mentioned that.
For non-union, so that any, if somebody pulls this off the website and goes through the budget, that anytime they see wages regular, like let's say we just happen to be on economic development, and it shows $385,680. That proposed budget includes a 2.5% wage increase village-wide for non-union employees. And then at the bottom, after the listing of the various job titles and positions in the Department of Personnel and Economic Development, there are the various options of 39-hour work week with a 2.5% increase, which is the $385,680, 40-hour work week with 0% increase. Although, yeah, so that comes out to a little more if it went back up to 39 or 40-hour work week. But you don't have the numbers of the current 39-hour work week at 0 or 1 or anything like that listed, correct?
So we do have where it says current salary, and in this case it's the 376, right above the 385. It shows the current salary of 376.
376,270
is the current salary at the 39 hours, no increase.
Okay.
So that is what they currently are.
Okay. Just so people that are reading the budget know what you've got in there. Thank you.
Yes, so that's what is currently in here. Obviously, everything is subject to change at the board's discretion. Okay, the one other item I did want to mention with economic development is back on the preliminary cuts list. You will notice on the second page of the preliminary cuts list, a $10,000 request for a large copier scanner. That's another one of the situations where we have some aging equipment and we're right now saying we're not gonna plan to replace it. If it does end up not working, we'll obviously look at another solution to take care of that. But that is one of the items that they were able to cut from their budget. Any other questions on that one? Okay. Moving on to
Spencer, on the copier, the copier you just mentioned, was that
yes.
right? Do we have a maintenance fee on that then? Is that?
We do not. We have had a lease that we had paid out up until a couple of years ago when it went on past its expected useful life for the lease. And so we're continuing to use it, but we don't have a specific maintenance contract on that.
So if it does go down, we have to call somebody out and pay that person? Full
Yes.
rate?
Time and material, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so at some point, that's gonna exceed, it could exceed what it would cost, for a new one, but it's like buying a car. At some point, you put more money into it, and it's costing you for repairs, it's better off to.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So you just gotta weigh that decision. Okay.
Right.
Spencer, do you know, is the scanning expense right before all the Morris expenses, is that to scan large plans, and is that outsourced?
Yes.
Okay. And we have the large plan copier, because I see that we don't expend much copying them in-house if it's only $400 for paper and toner for a large plan copier.
Trustee, the scanning expense that you see, we keep generally in our address files physical copies of things for probably about 5 or 6 years, and then we scan them electronically because we need more room in the paper files. We just can't, keep expanding. So
Right.
those go into the paper vision, and we have a professional come in, get huge boxes of this stuff, and do it in blocks. It's a lot more efficient than if we did it ourselves.
Yeah, so it's kept electronically. Okay.
Yep.
Fred, let me ask you something real quick as long as you were up there. The total Morris expenses, 170,000-ish, is that about on target about what you thought they would be?
Yes, yes. And we're also pleased to report, Trustee, I think was it the Code Enforcement Building and Zoning Committee immediately previous to this, we kind of did a detailed analysis, and we're also very pleased with the amount of application fees that we're generating, which we're up slightly there. And it's a difficult thing, during the boom years, when we were generating permit fees that were in the $300,000-$400,000 range, it was more comfortable to have permanent staff on hand that gave you a little bit more flexibility. But when our permit fee revenues plummeted to about $130,000, $140,000 a couple of years ago, all of a sudden the situation was reversed, and we had to resort to the private contractual nature of our plan reviews and inspections. Overall, I think we're very pleased with where we are at right now, both in terms of the quality of the work product we're getting from our consultants, also the fact that our permit fees are up over what they were, and we think it was a good decision, a policy decision by the village board in that regard.
Well, we're money to the good right now with that.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
It's a nice way to be.
thanks.
Right. On to administration. Okay, administration has also stayed fairly consistent. The one item that you will notice, and this is back to Trustee Klebenow's point that she had raised earlier about the calendar, under professional services, you see the calendar produce the 8,600 is now the correct figure. The previous budget, it was down, I believe, to 4,500, which was not in accordance with the contract or typical expenses. So we have increased that to the 8,600 to be a little bit more accurate with what's actually going on there. And then that is the majority of the expenses there, other than the calendar items that we've talked about down in printing and binding. Calendar printing and newsletter printing, as we had discussed. Any additional questions there? Okay. Finance Department. The significant change that you'll notice is right now we are, as you know, we've had a little bit of reorganization and changes in staff, and rather than having a budget analyst, we are now having a temporary staff accountant. And because it's a temporary accountant, we have listed it in professional services this time. So you'll see the $98,000 in professional services rather than a portion for wages and a portion for health insurance and a portion for IMRF and FICA and Medicare. It's all listed as one item right there in professional services.
Sven?
Yeah.
Going back into the last one, when you were talking about McIntyre, I also see in that category under printing and binding, you're showing village calendar printing again. It's twice now. We have 8,000 back under the one, plus we have this, another 8,000 for.
So we've got 8,000 under professional services, and that is for the production of the calendar, for Larry to put together the layout, to get everything organized and set up. And then we've got another 8,000 to pay the printer to actually physically print the calendar.
But didn't we already show that in a previous one? Aren't we duplicating?
We had talked about it as on the initial list of the preliminary cuts.
Okay, that's.
And said we had reduced
Okay.
it to the 8,000, and this is just seeing it in the budget.
For some reason I was thinking it was under another category that we already had shown the printing.
Yeah, we had talked about it previously, and then it's the same dollar amount for two different pieces of the
Okay,
service.
thank you. I thought we were doubling it up again.
Okay, couple items just to mention on finance. As you can see on the preliminary cuts on finance, we have, in order to reach our target again, we've also had to make some cuts. And so, you know, we're doing some of the generic things, but we also wanted to at least call your attention to the fact that right now the budget does not provide paying the GFOA for submission for a budget for consideration for the GFOA budget award, as well as for the CAFR. We still have the same amount in there for the auditors to still produce the CAFR in a form that's acceptable to the GFOA, but we're simply not, right now, budgeting the money to have them look over it and process that for the awards. And that's $350 for the budget and $450 for the comprehensive annual financial report.
Repeat that one more time for me, Spencer, please.
Okay. In prior budgets, we have budgeted about $330 to pay for the GFOA award. So what happens is after we produce the budget, after we prepare the budget, we then submit it to the Government Finance Officers Association for them to give us an award that says, you know, you have a distinguished budget presentation award,
It's like an application.
and give us the plaque.
No, yeah, I understand that.
So they're associated with that is a $330 application fee. The same thing happens with the comprehensive annual financial report. With that, there's a $450 application fee. And we're not proposing changing the way that these items are prepared. We would still pay our auditors to prepare the CAFR in a manner that would be submitted to GFOA. are just not budgeting to actually submit it and pay that fee. We're happy to put it back in. I mean, it's,
Spencer, let me, from my perspective, we were happy to pay for the FBI Academy for Deputy Chief Gunther because of the benefit to the village and the DC. You are our acting finance director, and if you are going to have a good resume so that you hopefully stay here, would be nice if you had some awards under your belt. Would you please put them back in?
I would love to put them back
I
in.
second that.
I will not fight you on that one. No. However, we did want to, I mean, we had our target that we had to meet as well, and all of the other departments also had significant things that they cut. You know, Public Works is looking at not getting their Tree City USA, and we felt it was only fair to apply the same standards to us, and so we have. But if this is an important thing that the board would like to see back in, I'm more than happy to put it back in.
It's important.
I agree. Happy to have it back in. Not going to argue on that one. Okay. Moving on to Police Department, Police Administration. The first change that you'll notice here is you'll see right under contractual services a new account called NUCPS Contract Training. That is where we provide training, and this is nothing, the program is not new, it's a program that we've had previously. But what we do is we provide training for the NUCPS organization. They pay us, the individuals that come to the training pay us, we pay the provider to come and do the training. We end up making money on it. What has happened in previous budgets is we'd budgeted the net amount, which is about $4,000. We'd budgeted the net in revenue. However, the issue is we're actually making the expense, it's not a pass-through that we're paying directly to the organization. We're not collecting the money on their behalf. It really is our expense to pay for them to come and do the training, and it's our revenue when people come to the training. So in the revenue, there's an offsetting $24,000 revenue. Here, there's a $20,000 expense. Makes the expenses look higher and look different, but it's not any additional cost. It's revenue neutral. And similarly, you will also notice well, sorry, we'll get to that in patrol. But a similar type of thing is going on with the extra duty wages, where we're no longer doing as many extra duty assignments. Because of that, the revenues are down and also the expenses are down. But it's, again, revenue neutral, not a specific change. Another major difference that you'll see in professional services is a change in the village prosecutor rates. We had previously had 2 different village prosecutors working at flat rate amounts, and we were able to potentially reduce that. I believe we're still in discussions with the second prosecutor about that, but it's looking very favorable that we were able to reduce that. And so that was a savings of a significant amount there.
If you drop down to utilities,
Yeah.
year to date, we've got just under budget of 11,000. And 2010 actual was 12,000. Have utilities skyrocketed that much? Because we're going to, the building is closed now more than ever, which hopefully utilities usage would correspondingly drop. So where did this 17,000 come from in the utility budget?
In my understanding, the increase was due to the water usage. We've looked at it for both, you'll see that this for both the police and fire side. It's just not for the police side. We pay for the utilities for both. So you'll see the water usage has increased. We've had facilities out to look at it and do a study to try to see why it's increased, where it's at, and I guess there really wasn't any determination yet. It's just an increase in use of water.
Wow.
Maybe they're starting to wash their own cars.
IT air conditioning.
That was part of it, but that was not, I was told from facilities that contributed to it, but that was not the sole source for the increase.
Okay.
The IT now has moved all its servers and the computer room into the police facility right outside our communications center. Naturally, the computers generate a large amount of heat. They're using a water-cooled system, and that has, since that is installed, it has increased our water usage, which we do pay the water rates for. However, that is not the sole reason for the jump. We believe there was something else, and that hasn't been identified. But you do bring up a valid point also, as well as that should drop with the station being closed over the weekends. Our records division is, over the weekends closed, but with the communications center, there will be reduction in air conditioning or cooling costs just for the comp center as
Yeah,
well.
electricity. Is there one water meter for the entire building, both police and fire? Or is it separately
I believe
metered?
it's one, and again, it's put on our budget rather than separating it out. I'll yield to the Public Works Director on that, but I believe it's one. As is the electric. Electric is 1 meter as well.
Did we do anything with the energy-saving lights? on either
They're
side?
currently, they've been working very, very hard. I want to say they're probably over 80% completed. They have almost the whole second floor. They were down working today, down in the basement in the main floor.
They done the FD side yet, or is it just your
I
side first?
don't know.
Okay.
I don't go over there. I'm not allowed to go there.
Wow.
His pass was revoked.
Chief Trout,
Sorry?
do you know if they've done the energy replacement lights on the fire department side?
Yeah, I believe I saw them in a couple of Saturdays.
Okay. Well, that should help at least something in the future.
Steve, if I may ask, could you check tomorrow with our expert on that particular system that we're working on right now to find out how far they are?
How far they are in the light replacement?
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
So would you like to reduce the utilities slightly or leave it about the same till we see how the water shakes out the last billing cycle? Or, I mean, we could
Well, I would
probably
like
reduce
to,
it a little
I'd
bit.
like to take a look at, if you would, in the process, what the water bills are up at. If you've got, some old ones, so we can see the difference in the, obviously, pass-through water rate. But like Trustee Klebanow said, if we're getting a lot of personal car washing that is contributing to thousands of dollars, if it's contributing a minor amount, okay, it's a perk. If we're going through a lot of wasted water that the residents are paying for, it's a perk that's going to have to go.
So you'd like to get a history of the water bills for that facility?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Previous budgets, we have not really budgeted for the water. This is the first year we actually budgeted for the water, so that's why you may see some increase as well. But we did notify that, and we did realize there is a use of the water, a raise in the,
How was it paid for in the past if you weren't budgeted? Was it paid out of facilities in general, or was it, how was it paid?
It was paid through the police department, but it's never on the, that budget, the finance ordinance sheet.
Mhm.
So I never budgeted for it until the end of after the budget was put in last year, then I realized we were being charged with water.
Okay.
this year when we prepared our budget too, we also itemized a lot more. You'll see when we get to training and other things, we tried to, as Trustee Emery mentioned, a lot of things were miscellaneous or were covered under miscellaneous. We took things out of miscellaneous and itemized them more than we have in the past. That's why you'll see some new items in there. It's not a raise in our expenses, it's just removing things out of miscellaneous and try to itemize them in a more efficient manner. And that's what the water was as well.
Okay.
Some additional information on water. When we have a car fire or some type of nuisance fire, and we carry approximately 500 gallons of water in each rig on each pumper. When we come back to the station, we also fill the pumpers. And then along with the normal cleaning, washing the floors, the apparatus floors and things like that. So there is the fire department would use the bulk of the water for both facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on
area. Please.
I think I just would like to mirror what Trustee Fleming said. Even though we've gone over these departments, this is the first time we're seeing these. So
Yes.
I don't think that when we pass when we're through talking about your department, we're really through talking about your various departments. Gotcha.
In other words, you're not home free yet.
When we did this, you'll see new items in there. That's not something that we're just adding in this year. It's something that we have done in the past. We try to itemize. I'll be here Saturday and understand that this is a process and understand that there'll be a lot more questions and answers needed. Can I go sit down now?
Did you budget for the work to be done on the range?
There's you'll see two range entries. One you'll see for $5,000 for immediate repairs that needs to be done now. And then we put on so that it's on the board's radar for the future under capital expense, $50,000 for our range. Our range is outdated. Where there's only one person in the nation that's able to repair this range. He's from Ohio, so when we do this, we're going to have to fly him in. Also, Downers Grove has the same range as we do, so we're going to try to coordinate when this person comes to coordinate the repairs at the same time, so it would save a reduction in savings on his flight time or his travel time.
Now, that's for the range itself. Does that include the mold problem that's got to be addressed?
No, the mold problem, spoke to Mike Chorney today. He's working on two quotes, anywhere from as low as $2,500 up to $24,000. We believe that just so everyone knows, we have mold found in our range just located in the ceiling tiles alone. It's not throughout the range. It's not in the ducts. There's no concern. Our range is on its own separate ventilation system. It's not attached to the rest of the building. So there's no concern that the mold has traveled throughout the building. It's been restricted to just the range. Mike Chorney is working on having it remediated. He has a couple more things which he's working on today. He's very comfortable, I believe, with the $2,500 quote. We believe, checking today, if we remove just the ceiling tiles, we could probably put our range back into operation because he thinks it's safe. So we already asked today for staff to remove the ceiling tiles so we can probably resume range operations. The benefit with that right now is we also use an outdoor range so elsewhere in the county. And starting this month, back in April, we've been utilizing that outdoor range. So we won't have to use the indoor range, but we'd like to get it up and running for our Citizens Police Academy.
How did the mold get there, Tom? Did they
We don't
figure it
know. This is the second time it's occurred. It occurred approximately 3-4 years ago when we had a very hot and humid summer. The range hadn't been used for a certain extended period of time. And so what we did is I walked in there one day and it was as hot down there as it was outside, and we saw we had mold growing. We believed that either a damper or something remained open. We checked, removed it at that time, removed the ceiling tiles, remediated it, and the air conditioning or the HVAC people came out and checked and was unable to determine why. It's back again, we don't know, and the weird part about this is that it's back again over the winter where the humidity is not so bad. Our proactive in the future will be is we're buying a dehumidifier for that. It's an enclosed system because you do have lead concerns on the range. So we'll be putting a dehumidifier, and we're going to run the exhaust system through the range a little bit more. There'll be an increase in gas, on natural gas to heat, some of that because it is heated as it goes through the ductwork. But that's the recommendation from the mold remediation experts, is that you put the system through a little bit more in the dehumidifier.
No water pipes going through there?
None that I recall seeing. No, because I don't think for the range it would be. I don't recall seeing any. And where the mold is growing, it's right as the vents come out from the outside air. It's right there at the ceiling tiles growing right there. As you go further down the range and other materials, it's not there. It's only right at the vents itself. So we don't know. We believe that with the increase in humidity, once mold finds a place to grow, I guess, obviously I'm not a mold expert, but it needs a place to grow. So the other thing we're going to do is when these tiles are removed, Mike Chorney is going to put in plastic ceiling tiles so the mold will not be able to grow and feed on that. So we believe that should solve our problem for the future as well.
Well, I know you think Brant's nuts, but on his tankers, like you said, they always had UV lights because, ocean-going boats get lots of mold. And
I
UV.
believe that also was brought up by Mike as well, too. Something with that, with the dehumidifier. Do you remember something UV like?
Patrol.
On your mold, is any of that capable of coming in under insurance?
I believe we already checked
Yes.
with Irma. It's a blow.
No?
I don't recall. I'll have to check with Mike. I believe Mike would.
Exception. Yeah, I don't think so, but we'll double check it.
Yeah, Mike, if anything, I mean, he's our Irma rep, and Mike would know.
Right. Moving on to police patrol. You'll see in here under the regular wages, it includes the patrol officers' salary, and this is for, in accordance with their contract, the 1% increase they receive. That is the amount with that increase. Major impacts here. The one item you will notice that went down significantly is maintenance services vehicles. Previously, there'd been a little bit of a discrepancy in how some departments budgeted for the replacement of vehicles and the changeover costs. In some departments, the changeover cost was just paid for out of the vehicle replacement program, and it was sort of factored into the cost for the vehicle. And the idea was the entire cost of the vehicle is what we need to be setting aside, because the whole point of the vehicle replacement program is to have a smooth amount that we set aside money each time, and we don't have the major increases when we purchase vehicles. Police had previously been paying for the changeovers out of their operating budget, which sort of defeated that purpose of the vehicle replacement program, kind of smoothing out the changes and making it part of that one specific program. So as of this budget right now, we're moving those costs for the equipment changeover just to be considered as part of the cost of the vehicle, because it really is the cost to get the vehicle, to get it into service, includes the cost to put the equipment on it. So that is that change, where it dropped about 20,000 in that account. There's also was fairly consistent here to prior times. I'm not sure if there's any specific questions.
Tom, what's the deal with outsourcing crossing guards? You've got crossing guard salaries in here, part-time.
Is there reductions?
Yeah, but what?
In looking to see, options to reduce our budget, we looked at last year of hiring Handy Frame Services to come in. They made a proposal last year to come in, and at that time we decided not to go any further with it at that time because their program was too new. I believe at that time they had only 2 departments on that system. They have now increased that department, and if you want, Deputy Chief Gunther can come up and address this. He's done research, has talked to the other departments, how they feel anti-frame services have been, and we've received nothing but positive comments from all the other departments you contacted. Anti-frame will hire our current crossing guards. Jim can discuss, I'm not sure whether there's a reduction in their salary. However, they are offered by Andy Frame not only as crossing guards, but other places. If they would like to work either another town, work more time, or work at special events that Andy Frame has, they would be offered that opportunity. So if there is any pay reduction from our services to theirs, and again, I'll let Jim address that, they can offset that with extra employment if they want. Our crossing guards, work only maybe a couple hours a day. They would have the opportunity to get additional employment if they so choose. Most of them are retired or senior citizens.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I saw something in the myriad of paper tonight about outsourcing. Something that was
This
you
would be,
know,
if we were to outsource to Andy Frame, we would receive, we threw this in there, not as an actual reduction, just as a proposal for the board's consideration. It is an issue that we want, before we make that determination as a cut, we wanted the board's approval to do so. It would be, I believe, a savings to the village of approximately $5,000 from our current service to go to this Andy Frame service. It would also be an improvement in service in that they will take care of training. Less staff time for us. Right now, my administrative assistant oversees the crossing guards, has to make sure she gets crossings, has to make sure she gets replaced when someone can't be there. Uniforms, they would cover all of that. And also, too, is that if someone were to call in sick or not be able to take care of a training, they contact their Andy Frame supervisor rather than us, and Andy Frame makes sure that there's a supervisor or a replacement there. We don't have to scramble. We also don't have our CSO, or we don't have an officer actually out there doing the crossing. However, I believe the last time it was, there were only 2 departments at that time. And again, Jim, if you want to address the other towns and research you have on that.
Chief, wasn't the other concern too, we weren't sure if they were going to hire back ours? Because there was some, it seemed to me, I thought we talked about they may not hire back ours, and then we'd be getting somebody from another town, and that was, I thought that was a concern that we had last year.
I believe have changed, and they've assured us that they will hire our people. There may be, again, a reduction in salary, but then again, could be offset by employment at other events. They would, if our crossing guard was sick, they could bring a crossing guard from another town in here and vice versa. They do have, as we do, we have part-time, or not part-time, but supplemental or on-call crossing guards. We have 2 of those. But some of our crossing guards, it's becoming almost like a year-to-year thing. We have like Al Rhodey, who's out there every single day and has been there, and I don't think he could pull Al from his crossing. He has a great bond with the kids, and that's something we wouldn't want to do, and we wouldn't want to, lose his employment, but he would still be able to continue to do that, and I'll let Jim address that.
I think one of the other issues we talked about is we were using people that were from the community, and we didn't have anybody from outside when you're dealing with the kids also. So there was like a safety factor there.
Well,
we felt a little more comfortable.
Some of our
with.
current crossing guards are not Westmont residents.
Okay.
When we advertised, we tried to get a Westmont resident, but, preference was given that way, but we still had some openings, and so we do have some that are not Westmont residents.
Okay.
I don't know how many exactly. 2 are not Westmont residents. Did you want to address the quality of the service that Andy Frame?
Sure. Just in a kind of an informal survey, we reached out to Carroll Stream, West Chicago, Bolingbrook, Oak Park, and Mount Prospect, all who have been using Andy Frame for a period of time. Everybody says that they're excellent. There has been no problems for the people we've reached out to and had the conversation with. So no complaints from those agencies. I don't have the total number of agencies that Andy Frame contracts to, but for those 5, everything was fine.
I think those communities are a little bit larger than us in some cases, too. Would have to provide more guards other than what you would need here.
Sure. I believe Mount Prospect has only 2 crossings. Mount Prospect was the smallest with 2 crossings, and again, no problems with them.
What about Bolingbrook?
Large, very large, a lot of territory.
Oak Park?
Big. Yeah, I don't have the exact size, but Bolingbrook probably the biggest out of the group. And going back to our issue, when there is a supervisor assigned to our area, so if there is somebody that needs to fill in, the supervisor is going to call somebody to fill that spot, or they'll take that spot themselves. So there will be direct supervision of the crossing guards for our town.
Did they say how long they've been using them? Any of the communities you dealt with?
Not specifically, several years in some cases, but I don't have the exact length of time.
I remember when we looked at this last year, there was only 2. I remember for one of those towns you mentioned, there was only 2 last time, and I think they had only been, Andy Frame started offering a service within the last 1 to 2 years. Mm-hmm. So it's no more than I believe than 3 years old. They're trying to grow and they're trying to expand on that. It's just an option. We're bringing options to the table for the board to consider. We are fine with our services now, but there could be a cost savings if we chose to go that route.
Well, you've got included in the draft budget $30,500, which is their current salary. Does that include like the comp insurance and everything else we pay to have them?
Well, they're included, the way our insurance is based upon revenue. It's a revenue-based formula. I mean,
Oh,
they are,
okay, so
they are
it is-
listed in our, what's the term, Spence? We just had to fill out the asset,
The
statement
underwriting.
statement of values or statement of assets. So we list all of our employees, and they're certainly covered. But there is no specific insurance premium assigned to them.
Yeah, for each,
So this dollar amount would just be merely the salaries.
all right.
As I said, they are part-time employees. They are paid a minimum amount. They do go there in the morning, some for an hour, some for a half hour, some 45 minutes. Very few have afternoon crossings. I believe Al does. Manning School's the only one with the afternoon crossings, I believe, and then back again in the evening for all the schools.
Yeah, I was just looking to see if we could have additional savings built in that we hadn't considered, but it'd be negligible.
That also does not include their uniforms, so there's also a uniform cost that would be another savings to us as well, because Andy Frame pays for the uniform. Coincidentally, approximately about
They have to wear
6
hats.
months to a year ago, I got an email from a Public Works employee. I don't believe it was Director May, but it was complimenting that they were driving through Oak Park and saw crossing guards in like a sharp black uniform and with the black raincoat and with the sign. And
Little hat.
they looked, yeah, well, not the Andy Frame sign, but they looked very, very sharp, and they, because they provide the uniform and everything. Very impressive, very sharp. Hey, you may want to look into that. And when I called Oak Park to get more information, found out, well, we contract out to Andy Frame. So, I mean, visually also there would be, again, I would like to have local people, as you said too. Is that something maybe we could work with them if and when we get into an agreement? Someone locally, if they could hire locally first, someone that knows our kids and knows our area. No, I don't look good in black other than the suit.
We weren't thinking of putting you out.
Okay, well, you never know.
One other point to consider is they did not increase their cost to us, or their proposal to us is the same this year as it was last. So there was no increase from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. Kind of a positive.
Okay.
They want our business.
Yes, they do. And we approached them too. They did not approach us this year. We told them no, and we approached them, so.
Lastly, I just want to know, explain the tobacco grant expense.
Changing that tobacco grant every year. We apply to the Illinois Liquor Control Commission for a grant every year. This year, I believe, we are getting $30,500. In the past, that money could be used for any expense that the police department chose fit. We chose to use it for purchasing of equipment. A lot of things with brochures. We tried to use it for investigative purposes a lot. The Illinois Liquor Control Commission changed the rules this year in that it has to be used for a tobacco-related enforcement or tobacco-related expense. If it does not, we have to return the money. And so Detective Gomorasek is our juvenile officer, oversees our tobacco enforcement. So they will pay for any overtime or any officer's time that is used for doing tobacco enforcement checks. We do 4 checks a year. And also, we're going to look into buying brochures for smoking brochures. We haven't in a long time. We've cut that because of our budget expenses. So we're now looking to use that money to start buying pencils, cups, brochures, whatever we can, promoting the importance of not smoking. But that is a grant that we apply for every year. We were awarded again this year. It comes, I believe, in every they announce the awardees sometime around June, and also I think they get the check in August. But if we don't expend the money, we have to turn it back by June.
Another item I wanted to at least just mention, it's not a large dollar amount, but in uniforms, you'll notice there is nothing there for the motorcycle helmet, and you'll notice in the preliminary cuts, the motorcycle helmet and bike uniforms have been eliminated, and the intention then is to eliminate the motorcycle program.
Yes.
So that's something that hasn't been used very frequently, and we're just officially eliminating it. Kind of wanted to.
Do we only have the one?
We have a one Harley-Davidson motorcycle. I believe it's a 2006. I was going to say 96, but it's not that old. 2006. We are going to try 2 things. We've been told by our mechanic, now is the time to try to sell a motorcycle. We have 2 options. Strip it of all our police equipment and try to sell it. We believe we can get approximately $6,600 for it. Deputy Chief Brenza is going to put out a feeler first to other departments in all of Illinois, southern Wisconsin, to sell it as is, fully equipped. Because once we take the lights off, with the exception of a radio, we'll take the radio out. But once we take the lights off and some other equipment, those lights really aren't usable for us. They sit in the basement and collect dust. We try to put them in other vehicles as necessary, but we're going to try to market it that way first. If we get no sellers, then we'll strip all police equipment and sell it to the general public. The village mechanic has already indicated he could have a buyer that would currently, as it sits, give us $6,600.
Good. Okay.
If I could also mention one other thing too, I know it's a little, there's also, we've been notified by the Department of Justice that they are opening applications for a COPS grant again to hire for police officers, and we are submitting an application.
Good.
And what are our chances?
Probably the same as they've been the last 2 years.
None.
There's been none in DuPage County.
Not in a Republican county like DuPage, no.
There's always a first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've noticed, we've watched the last 2 years, and there has been no awards for new officers in DuPage County.
Thank you, Dick Durbin.
Thank you.
Right. Investigations is fairly simple. It's just the salaries and then a $500 Alma Scout for narcotic, in the state narcotic, in the federal narcotic expense category. So that's fairly basic.
Should be a one page, right? I got two of them, but I think they're the same.
Yeah, I have two also.
Oh.
Well, they're asking for
Two
twice
also.
as much money this year.
Once
Yeah.
again, the,
They're doubling their expenses again.
Yeah, they want twice as much.
the
money.
all-purpose PDF file would have solved that problem.
Okay. Tom, do you ever budget at all for, based on, it would have to be a projected item, of course, on revenues, based on past seized monies, either through drug seizures or anything like that?
No, we don't budget for anything on that. We do have a state narcotics fund and we have a federal narcotics fund. Those were restricted by state and federal law on how those funds are used. Usually have to be for narcotics or drug-related investigation or purposes. We don't budget for that because it's too hard to say how much we're going to take in. Detective Gabrielewski recently was assigned to a task force with DEA and DUMEG, and we're waiting for that award to come in. Jim, do you remember how much that was?
I don't, but we do have a potential $11,000 coming in next month for assistant doing.
Right, we assisted DUMEG, and our share would be approximately $11,000 for doing that. The task force, you know, we did it, he was temporarily assigned. They approached us and asking us if we could help them out, and we did, and now because of the sale of a car and some money that was seized, we expect to get that. But we don't budget for it because it's
Right, it's
not a
pretty
consistent
volatile,
flow.
but I'm just curious, because it, you know, it's not really found money, but, you know, just so that when somebody goes through a budget, sometimes it accounts for certain expenditures based on the seized funds. So I was just curious whether you ever...
Some of our expenses have been for drug prevention with the Snowball Snowflake program, buying brochures, again, the pencils, some of the promotional products. Not very much. We just recently, last year, used the state funds to pay for our DUMEG fees. However, this year, there's not enough money in our state budget to pay for the DUMEG fees, so we're back to paying DUMEG fees, so that's why you will see an increase in that probably.
And without identifying them, then seized vehicles so that they sort of fly below the radar?
They're sold, well, right now, while we're waiting, we used to sell them on eBay. We are now going to wait for the DuPage Mayors and Managers auctions, which is twice a year, so we would sell those. So that's why you'll see an increase of vehicles there. But there again, it's a hit and miss, or also what we get awarded by the court as well. So everyone knows on a drug seizure, we can seize the vehicle, we attempt to seize the vehicle, but the driver, the owner of the vehicle, does go to court and has the right to have a hearing in front of the judge, and the judge decides who's going to get the vehicle. Does it go back to the original owner in lieu of a fee, or does it go back to the police department? If it goes back to the police department, we can determine to use it as a detective vehicle, which we have done in the past, or we would sell the car and put it back into our... That money does not go into the general fund, though. That goes right into the drug account. So that's kind of a hit and miss. Again, it depends on the officer's activity. We see an uptick in seizing of vehicles for felony traffic offenses.
Yeah, there's a
However-
new, I think it's a bill pending to increase the offenses in which a seizure can take
Correct.
place.
However, we're not seeing an increase of the judges awarding us the cars. We do get fees and everything that way, and the goal for that, so everyone does understand, is not so much to, well, it is to penalize the person, but again, it's more along the zero tolerance lines. If someone's out there driving on a felony revoked driver's license, it's to get the car off the road and have the person change his behavior and stop driving, not just to financially impact them, but to get the message across. You shouldn't be driving. You're not to get the message. You keep on driving and driving. Well, we're going to take the opportunity away for you to drive by taking your vehicle. That's the reason for that law.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. With the last item tonight is the police communications, and this one is basically it's all the transition to the dispatch, and you'll see lots of figures on the wages of before the dispatch and then after the dispatch, and we're right now conservatively budgeting, assuming 2 months for transition. I believe we're still planning to do it by the end of May.
I attended a consolidation meeting today. I spoke to Manager Searle this afternoon. We now no longer have a target date. We have a confirmed date. May 23rd is when our changeover will take place.
Great. So
But when we prepared this budget, we were unsure as to where it was going to be. So to estimate conservatively, we prepared for an extended period of time.
Right. So now with the confirmed date, we can go back and adjust slightly and
It
save
is
a little bit
confirmed,
there.
yes.
Okay. Any additional questions at this time?
Sure, we'll have more on Saturday.
Yes.
I don't feel too good.
That's right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Spencer, are you going to go over the pension pass-through so that we can start with fire on Saturday?
Yeah. Yep. Where that is. Should be right here. So apparently that budget sheet is also missing. Maybe we'll go over that on Saturday in detail. But
Okay.
the budget continues the same assumption that we've had in the prior year, which is contributing 105% of the ARC, which is what was budgeted in the property tax revenue, and then also an additional $90,000 from the supplemental sales tax. And that's what we've done the past several years, and we're just initially assuming we're going to be continuing that.
When you have the fiscal years ending 2009, when will you account for fiscal year 2010?
So these are the levy years, and so this levy year 2009 actually translates into fiscal year 2011. So it's the levy that we did December of 2009. We receive it in May and June of 2010, which is actually fiscal year 2011.
Okay.
So this is through what we've currently contributed.
And the funding has gone down because despite funding at 105%, the funding has gone down significantly, showing fiscal year 2009, because why? Were there a lot of retirements?
The net assets, I think the more up-to-date version of this chart looks a little bit better. So this is through the levy year 2009. We had the lower amount of assets because that was before we had started funding at the higher rate. So in this fiscal year, the amount that we're contributing is higher, but because they lag behind, they're still looking at the data. So the levy year 2009 is when we do the levy, and at that point in time, it's based on what the assets were. Now the assets are higher, our percentage is a little bit higher, and I can have that more detailed chart for you on Saturday.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, if it's fiscal year 2009, but it's actually through the levy that went up in December of 2009 and implemented, into budget year 2010, I'd like to see at least if we're
With the more updated
showing
chart.
something.
Yep.
The very simplistic answer to your question is that the actuarial requirement that we've been given by the actuary has trended upward, and it jumped fairly significantly between 2008 and 2009. Now, I know in our conversations downstate regarding the whole pension funding issue, more than one person has called into question some of the actuarial assumptions and whether or not they're realistic or not. So that's a question out there for debate. But that's the reason that we've been told by the actuary, and that's based on anticipated retirements, the age of the officer, all the different assumptions that they make.
Spencer, anything else, or? That takes us through what we wanted to get through tonight. Board, any other questions that you may have?
Everyone's done a great job.
Just thanking the staff for putting this all together. We'll be coming back on Saturday. Thank everybody for watching, and if there's no other questions, no other items, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Forsley.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Fleming.
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow.
Yes.
Trustee Emery.
Yes.
Thank you. We are adjourned.